these PHP examples. If you don't have a laptop, you're of course welcome to just listen. That's perfectly fine.
Which session is this?
This is Intro to PHP. Agile got switched to room 162.
Somebody else can take my chair at the desk if they want. I'm just going to be hanging out, helping out, so I don't need to sit.
Are you all set up for the recording and everything? I'm supposed to help.
Yeah, I think
She
so.
knows I'm good.
I think it's recording now.
Did you hit the broadcast button?
Yeah, because it says stop.
I hit OK.
Click, go back to your screen just to make sure it's actually broadcasting. Because it says you're sharing your screen. I just want to make sure it's actually broadcast.
Oh, it says stop sharing.
Don't stop sharing. Just
But is sharing the same as broadcast?
You just need to go to the window with the Hangout thing in it.
Go live now, it says in the top.
Do you have the window where you started sharing your screen from? You go up to window and... Yeah, there we go. Okay, you are broadcasting. Cool.
There you go.
All right, so this is Intro to PHP. If you're looking for Agile, they moved that to room 162. So we're gonna do some PHP. PHP turned 20, I think, this year or very recently. Do you know if it was this year, Jason? I know I saw some tweets for PHP turning 20 pretty recently. So it's been around a long time. I've been doing it for 15 or 16 years or so. Yep, and I like it. And I'm Jeff, and on the internet, I'm Serendipity. So primarily, I'm the Drupal developer. So that's where I do my PHP world is inside of Drupal. So Drupal is a subset of PHP. So you can find me on the internet, those places. And I work at Common Media in Hadley, Massachusetts. So the rest of it is doing PHP. So if you have Apache web server on your computer with PHP installed, it doesn't have to be Apache, it could be something else, but Apache is the most common. I'll walk you through writing some PHP code, and if you don't have a computer, you can just look at the screen and see what PHP code looks like and what it entails and how to make it do stuff. So this is a first PHP application, really simple. It's a form on the internet, and you put some numbers in there, and you hit the button, and it adds them up. And then you can do that again. And you get a sum. So we can look at the code that makes that happen. That's Drupal. This is PHP. So this is the HTML form that presents the question to you to put two numbers in there. And you can see it's not a very big file. I'm sorry, this is the action file. So this is the HTML form.
I can't see diddly. Do you have this online?
I do.
That I can,
you can't get to this website online, but you can download the source code. I can post a link for that. Maybe I can make it. Maybe I can make it bigger.
Do you want to sit here? I already know.
Command plus.
Just
Sure.
Not in PHP Storm. On the website, it will. Yeah.
No, a lot of times terminal windows will do that too.
Yeah. Terminal window would do it. This is PHP Storm.
Thank you. Presentation mode?
Where is it? That's what I'm looking
Near
for.
the bottom.
Keep going down.
There you go.
Thank you.
See if that helps.
The trick is, can I get out of this? So, yeah. So this is the HTML that asks the question. So we have two inputs here, which are just text boxes. And so that creates the form that you see on the web page that asks for the two numbers and puts a submit button on there that does it. So that's HTML. And this action part is where it calls the PHP stuff to make stuff happen. So that's this file here. So it's just making a call out to that file. And PHP can do math just like any computer program can, C++, Java, any of those things. So what I'm doing is just grabbing the what the user's input into those two fields and then adding them and then printing out the result in some HTML down here. So that's all there is to that application, which is the only thing that application you can do is add two numbers. So we could talk about how to get you guys writing some PHP. So you need something to write PHP in. So I'm writing it in PHP Storm, which is IDE, but all you need is something that you can type text in. So if you have a Mac computer, that can be a piece of software called Atom or Sublime, and you should, if you don't have one of those things, you should download it now before we keep going. And so Atom is atom.io. PHP Storm, I don't know if there's a free one. You can use Vim or Sublime. So why don't we get downloading those things now if you have a computer. If you need one of us to help, we can walk around and help you. How many people have a text editor already, or how many people need help, I guess?
Is there anything for an iPad editor?
I've never done anything on an iPad, but are there any text editors? Anybody know if you can get a text editor on an iPad?
I'm not really sure. I mean, I've tried.
Google it.
I did. I've actually downloaded like 3 little apps. I'm just not sure if any of them were.
There are terminal emulators, so you could connect to it if you have access to a server somewhere else that could do VI or something.
It's also, if you have a Mac, there's another free one called Text Wrangler.
Yep.
So it's not as fancy as PHP Storm.
All right, does everybody have one, or does anybody need help getting something? Okay. So if you don't, so the text editor is where you're going to type your code and or your HTML. You also need to have Apache running on your computer. So this website here is running locally on my computer. That's why you can't. There's no place on the internet I can send you to go to get this. So what you want to do is have that running on your computer. So if you have Apache, if you're on a Mac, and it depends on what operating system you have, but some in the control panel. In sharing, you have a web sharing option. You can click it on, I think 10.7 and earlier you have that. If you're 10.8, 10.9, you have to turn it on. So I was hoping that people had those things installed already, but if you don't, we can get that going for you. Does anybody need Apache? If you type localhost on your computer, oh, you have to spell it right. If you have that, then you have Apache running.
You type it on your browser?
In a browser, yes, thank you. Does anybody need help getting that going, or everybody have.
What was it you said to do on system preferences?
Go into sharing there. Yeah. And if you have
Remote.
web sharing, if you go to your Apple menu here and go about this Mac, yeah, you're on 10.9. So they took it out of the control panel for those later ones.
Okay.
So you'll have to do something like on this web page here in order to get it set up for you. So you have to open Terminal.
Okay. I don't normally work on this Mac.
Do
My Mac
Spotlight,
comes up there.
the magnifying glass there, and then type in Terminal.
Okay.
And then you have to type pwd to see if you're in your home directory. Yeah, so if you do mkdir, it's on the screen here. mkdir, and then can you see it, or is it too
Oh,
small?
DIR.
Yeah.
Okay. And then do I do the sites?
Yep.
File exists.
Oh, you already have a sites directory, but when you went to localhost, it didn't work for you.
Unless I didn't type it in right. Well, go ahead. I don't
Okay.
have to, yeah. I'll keep playing around.
And anybody else need help with Apache or all set? All right, so if you open so the first thing you have to do to write any PHP is you have to put it in PHP tags. So if you have a file open in a directory where you can go to that Apache is serving. So for me, that's the sites folder. For some of you, it might be /library web server documents if you're just working on the default Mac. But if you're going to type any PHP in your text editor, you have to start with this bracket $PHP. And then you close it with $PHP. So the end of your file has to close that way. So that's how you would start any PHP block of code. And then in this instance, what we're doing is just printing out a string, which is hello world. So I can walk you through making a new file like that. And what I always do is when I'm typing PHP is any piece of a program is if I am opening something that I have to close, I close it right away so I don't forget to close it later, because that can cause you syntax errors and sometimes hours of your life troubleshooting what went wrong. It's just that you didn't close a parenthesis or something. So just as a protection mechanism, I close it as soon as I open it. And then if you do print and then quotes, and then any string of text will work. So traditionally people do hello world. And all PHP statements have to terminate with a semicolon. So if you save that, and then in your web browser, type that in the file path. So after whatever the URL of your website is, type in the name of the file. In this case, I did new.php. And you see that I get the string there, which is off the screen. So if you change that, this is the output. web page. So that's your basic PHP syntax. Anytime you're going to type any PHP, you have to be in between these opening and closing PHP brackets. And then print is a built-in PHP function. In this case, I'm just printing a string, and all statements have to terminate with a semicolon. So the next thing that we can do to ramp up to writing programs is have variables in your PHP. So in PHP, you have to start a variable with a $sign, and then you can name your variable with letters and numbers and underscores. I'm pretty sure you can't start it with a number, but other than that, pretty much you can't have spaces in it for a variable name. So like in math, where you have X, Y's, and Z's, in PHP to indicate that something's a variable has to start with a $sign. There are different kinds of variables you can have. You can have strings, which is what we did in the first print statement. So just some stuff in between quotation marks is a string. You'll hear that in any language, JavaScript, PHP. And so in this case, we have numbers in the string, but if they're in quotes, they're just interpreted as part of the string. So other kinds of variables you can have are numbers. So notice there's no quotes there. So $X is equal to the number 3. That's an integer, and it tells PHP to store the value of 3 inside this variable that we named $X. You can have floats, which are basically a simple way to think about that is decimal numbers, and you can store those inside a variable in PHP. In some languages, you have to tell it what kind of value you're going to store, whether it's going to be an integer or a string, but in PHP, it just figures it out based on the value you give it. So if you give it something in quotes, it figures out that it's a string. And if you give it a number, it figures out it's a number. And then we can have arrays, which is a list of values, basically. So you can have a list of numbers. It could be a list of strings. So if you want to store 3 or 4 strings in one thing, we make an array, and we can store 3, 4, 10, however many strings. So if you become a PHP developer and you go into something like Drupal, there's arrays all over the place. And that's true. That's true. Well, I can't say everywhere because I'm not an everywhere developer, but in Drupal and Laravel, we have arrays all over the place. WordPress too. Yeah. So we have verification. WordPress too. So that's how you make a variable. So we can put some variables in our file. So go back to your text editor and make a variable. We call it var1 equals some value. var2 equals some other value. And now instead of doing print new world, I can say add these things. Oops, I closed it. So then it adds them and outputs it to the screen. So of course, with a variable, then we can change those numbers. So maybe we could say that we want to change var2, it would be equal to var1 plus 2 times var2. So what we have there is storing a different value in var2. So I'm going to make it equal to var1 plus 2 times var2. So in PHP and every programming language that I know about, to multiply, you just do asterisks. To add, you use the plus sign. So that in and of, that's going to store it inside the computer, but it's not going to change the web page because we didn't print out that result. So we have to print that out. We want to observe it on the screen anyways. It could possibly be that you store it and just use it somewhere else in the program. It's not always for presentation output, but if we want to see it now, so what I'm telling you is that I've changed the value of var2. So to prove it, I'm going to print it out, and then we should see a different value. And I don't know what it is, the value is, because I can't do that in my head. Should we figure it out first? 2 times 10 is 20, plus 13, 33. Thank you. Oh, it's 2,333. That's right. So it looks like it's 2,333. So what I'm going to do is put a line break in there. So HTML line break is BR. I'm just going to, so what I'm doing is put an HTML string of BR, and then maybe I should just do it on 2 different lines. But just to separate those values. And end everything with a semicolon. So the first time was a value of 23, and then after we changed it, var2 became 33. All right, so that's writing PHP, that's variables, end everything with a semicolon, start with PHP bracket, end with PHP bracket. So the next things of any programming language, you're going to have these control structures, which allow you to control where the program goes and what the program does. So when you're building an application, that's how you make it do the things that you want it to do, by controlling it based on inputs getting to certain outputs. So everything that we're talking about here, even though we're talking about it in the context of PHP, it applies to any programming language. So if you're going to do Ruby or Java or C++, anything that involves programming is going to have these same structures. They might have syntax differences. That means the way you type it. Like they might set, like Python doesn't have semicolons, but in PHP you have to end with semicolons. So the good thing about learning these structures is you can apply it to any of those languages. If at somewhere down the line you decide that PHP is not the thing for you, which is fine, these control structures will happen anywhere in programming. So kind of the first one that you usually encounter is if-else statements. So what you're going to have here is behavior of the program based on some condition. And if the condition is true, it's going to behave one way. If the condition is false, it's going to behave another way. So we have to have a way to test these things. So we have double equals is a test to see if things are equal or not. So this is single equals. That's to assign a value to a variable. So I'm saying take this value 13 and put it in this variable that I'm calling var1. The double equals is going to test if something is equals. So that's a conditional operator. So that's the difference here. So if you test if 7 is equal to 12, that's going to return a value of false because 7 is not equal to 12. With strings, if you test if a string elbow is equal to a string elbow, if they're the same, it will return true. In this case, they're the same character, so it will return true. So if x is equal to 15.7, and we ask if x is less than 16.8, would that be true or false? What value should that return?
True.
Right. This number is less than that number, so PHP would return true in this instance. So here's an example. So we define a variable and we give it the value of 10, and then we check if my variable is equal to 10. And that's going to be true, right? Because they're the same. So that means when this part of the if statement evaluates to true, this statement will execute. So it's going to print out, you are the best. This statement here, no way, won't get executed, not in this case, but if the value of my var changes, then that might execute. So let's fire one of those up in our text editor. So let's do if var1 equals var2. So the syntax of an if statement is the word if, and then this space doesn't matter, but in certain coding standards, people require it. Coding standards just make your code easier to read. So I always put that there because that's a Drupal coding standard, but it's not required. And now here's the condition, is var1 equal to var2. Then you get these brackets which make a code block, a little block of code. And then we can do any valid PHP can happen in here. So in this case, we'll print a string. So we can print a string, this is true. And it has to end with a semicolon. Then you could have an else condition. So what should it print in this case? Yeah, so as we have it, var1 and var2 are not equal. So let's check that out. And you guys are right. It's false. So how could we make it print the other thing?
Change it to 13, var2.
Change var2 to 13. Is there another way we could do it?
With a bag?
With a bag?
Can we use the exclamation point somewhere?
Oh, is that what a bag is?
Bang.
Oh, a bang. Yeah. Okay, so yeah, that would be another way to do it. So we didn't talk about that, but this is how you test if things are not equal or not. And 13 is not equal to 10. So this would say if var1 is different than var2, then execute this first part. And that will definitely work. I was not thinking of that at all, but yes, that's definitely true. And there's at least one more way that I could think of. There might be other ways too. We could change this top one to 10, and that would be another way that they would be equal. So let's go with the first suggestion, which was change var2 to 13. So now we think that that's going to be true, and we think it's going to execute this statement, and it does. So this is true. So those are if-else statements. So that allows you, so you can imagine in the context of the first thing that I shown, which was a form, which that form added two numbers, you could just as easily ask a user some questions like, what is your favorite color? And if they say purple, you could have an if statement that says, if they say purple, change their screen to purple. If they say yellow, change their screen to yellow. And you could have a final statement that said, else, I don't understand that color, because maybe it was a color you never heard of, or maybe they made up a word or typed in nonsense. So there's all kinds of ways that these variables can change. So that's the first control structure that happens in pretty much any programming language you have, though. So then there's loops, which help us loop through content. So if we have an array that has 10 things in it, we might want to do something to every element of that array. We might want to check every element of that array. So you have for loops. And in PHP, we have this nice thing called a for each loop. So let's talk about for each loop. So one way to think about an array is if you think about a form on a web page that has an add more button, so you want to say, enter in all the colors that you like. So there might start with one field and you might type in purple, and there might be add more button where they can add another field and they might say, I also like yellow, and they can type as many colors as you want. And so you don't know ahead of time how many colors they're going to type. They might choose one color, I like purple, and that's the end of the day. They might choose 15 colors, you're just not sure. So what you could do in that circumstance is store your values that the user gives you in an array. So what I have here is an array of 3 things, and they're all strings in this case. So you might want to check each value of the array. So we have this control structure called a for each, which allows us to loop over the array. So the for each loop doesn't care how long the array is, doesn't care if it's 20 things or 3 things or 1 thing. It's just going to go through each of the things. So what you want to pass the for each loop is some array, and then you do as, and then you name what you're going to use as this temporary name inside the for each loop for each element of the array. So you can name this anything. So this first parameter of the for each loop has to be some array. So that has to exist in order for this for each loop to work. So it exists in this case right up here. We have to find it up here. This second piece, the as piece, we can name anything we want. Usually what I'll do is just name it the first letter of whatever array I'm looping over, but it can be named anything. So now we could do something like print. We could just print all the results as it goes through. I think we'll need a line break. Otherwise, they would all end up on one line right next to each other. It would kind of look like one word. I can show you that. So this // here, what that is commenting out a line of code. So I'm saying I don't want to use that right now, but I might want to go back to it. So I'm just commenting it out. So if we look at, see what that looks like. So now it just mushed them all together. So that's why we want the line break in there. So that BR is just HTML for line break. So that went through each element of the array, in this case just printed it out. We can do anything we want, but we could check if $V equals purple. We can do something for the user. So say so now I'm commenting out both of these lines. So this is a multi-line comment. You can do this in a lot of languages, not just PHP. This is a common structure, /* and then it would */. I could equivalently just comment out a single line at a time, both of those like I did last time. That's either way is perfectly fine. So this is going to say if $V is equal to purple, print out I like purple too. So that did that. And
Right,
then,
so what if they type in like black?
right. So we would have to have conditions to check. So we'd have an else. And then we could do the same exact thing, something different. We could say,
What if it's a color you don't know? Like,
yep.
what is it just like for everything else that you wouldn't know?
Yep. So then you can have a fail-safe condition. So this would pick up anything that didn't match one of your previous conditions. We can say, so there's ways to protect against that if you don't like it. Like if you want to have completely known states, instead of having the user presented with a text box, you could lock them down. So you could probably think of a way you could lock down their inputs. You could have like a drop-down menu which has, say, only 7 choices, like colors of the rainbow or something. And then you as the programmer know ahead of time that you're only going to get these 7 things. And then you can make a if-else ladder that checks against those 7 things. You can still have the fail-safe. So typically you might say, I have no idea how you got to this part. Like, especially if you're writing a program and you're trying to troubleshoot and you might not know the inputs, maybe you're expecting 7, but somehow you ended up with 10. You have this little troubleshooting statement. I didn't ever expect to get here. Something went wrong. Go back and look at your code and the things that came before this to see where it fell down and, hopefully fix it. So this one, we think black is good, but purple is better. Should we ever get to that statement?
Nope.
I don't think so, because we don't have black in this array that we're passing into it. But we did get that is not a color I recognize. But it all came out on the same line, so I'm going to put in a BR there. And I got that more than once. And it started over here. So black never got processed because black is not in this array. We can put black in this array. And I'll put a BR here so that they don't get smushed together. Did it not work?
Did you not save?
No, you did work. But black is good as on the last line.
Oh, right.
Oh, I didn't put one for that.
You
didn't put the
next one.
That is not a color.
Thank you.
Maybe it has to have the break over the top. Pretty break.
You can certainly put it on top. That would be okay. The issue that we were having here was processing. This happened twice because there are 2 that I didn't account for, which are yellow and green, I think. But I didn't have BRs in there, so it was smushing all those on the same line.
Now, what if I want to say whatever the color is not a color?
Oh, sure.
Can you combine variables and
Right. So
strings?
in this case, we can't because we're hard coding this array up here. But in the case of user input, we would have that field. So these account for the user input on that other form. So if I had 10 colors or that they put in, the 10th one would could be potentially be $_post. That's where you get the variable from a HTML form that is posted. When they hit the button, that's a post request.
Okay.
And HTML stores that into this post array for you. So then I would have access to $_post 10th, and then I could put that in the statement. So instead of saying that is not a color, I could say $_post 10th is not a color that I recognize, and then whatever they put in there. So if they typed in hamburger, it would say hamburger is not a color that I recognize. So in this case, I don't.
You can't just put $B?
Yeah, you can put $B. But I can't put it in single quotes.
It can't be inside the string.
Okay. Yes and no. That's okay. That's a great question. We can handle that question. So if you have a string in PHP that is with double quotes, it's going to process that variable as a variable. So you can see how $B is highlighted as all the other $B's are in this kind of blue color. So if you're in double quotes, you can do that. So let's take a look at what that looks like. So as you said, it picked up the color there. So yellow is not a color that I recognize. Green is not a color I recognize. So those are things that are in the array, but not things that we have a case for in our if-else statement. If we do this in single quotes, PHP Storm is helping me more than I want it to right now. So now you can see it's not in that blue. So what the single quotes are is going to interpret that literally. So now we get $B. There's another possibility that you can do. If for some reason you were in single quotes and you couldn't avoid that, you can take that outside of the string and then use this dot operator to append these two strings together. It's going to glue them together just as strings. So I'm going to put a space here so that they don't run together. And then we're back to getting our colors. So, yep. So we can use the $B. We can. So the other new things that happen there is this dot operator to glue two strings together. They say append operator. And then the difference between single quotes and double quotes is as far as PHP is concerned. It's going to, inside double quotes, it's going to interpret variables as variables. Inside single quotes, it's going to interpret them literally and output whatever characters you put inside of there. And then, of course, we could build up the if-else ladder to account for the other conditions of yellow and green, whatever our program requires of us at that point. Any other questions about that file as is so far? So that's for each loops, variables, arrays, append operators, single quotes, and double quotes. You guys are great. You guys are flying. All right. There's also a for loop. It's a lot like a for each loop. The for each loop is kind of a more convenient construct of that. I don't think I'll go into it, but I mean, I can go into it. What do you guys think?
You could show it.
Sure. So I got for each loop in my head, but it's not as. So so you need a control for a for loop. And a lot of times we use I for that, for index. And then I is less than some value. And then we're going to increment I. So that's new to us. That's the increment operator. So I++ adds 1 to the value of I every time we go through this loop.
Can I ask a question?
Of
If
course.
there was a space between the for and the parentheses, would that make a difference?
No, not some. PHP will interpret it the same way. It will
Okay.
still do the same exact thing. It's just a matter of what your coding standards are.
Okay.
So in Drupal, we don't put a space there, but it won't affect the output of the program. Yep. We could also write all of this on one line. We could,
Right.
put these brackets over here and type all our stuff on one line. It's just not very convenient for humans. So now, so one thing we could do is just print the value of I. And you can see that it put all those on one line. So we know how to fix that. How do I fix that? Yep. Yep. We could have done dot would be okay. It would put it on the same line.
Or you can use double quotes in front of the I,
Mhm.
or you can do the dot.
What does a dot do?
Dot is
Or you don't
append
have to
operator.
write print
So,
twice.
yeah, it glues these two strings together. Yeah, you could print it twice. That's also okay. Yep. So I think we're gonna have 2 line breaks here. So we get 1. So in terms of the array, now if I wanted to reference array values, I could say print $var1. Now I only want to get one of those things. So in the for each loop, the $v did that for us. I got one thing out of the array each time through. The for each loop, PHP did that for us behind the scenes. Now in the for loop, I have to say I want to get a certain index of the array. And what I'm going to do is get the 0th index of the array. So that's new to us. We never talked about that. So if you have an array, you can access. So in computer science, they usually count from 0. They start with zeros. So the first thing, this is the 0th element of the array, this purple here. And then this is the first, second, third. So that's why I'm starting my index at 0 here. We could start this at 15 if we wanted to, or whatever. So that prints the first element of the array 3 times. So what if I want to get all of the elements of the array? How would I make that happen?
Go to 4.
What do you mean?
0, is that 0 and 4?
Put the 0 as a 4? This is one of my favorite things about computer science, is that we can just try this with very low danger.
When you say print $I,
Yep, we can do anything we want. Let's see what 4 does. Oh, no good. But it's low danger. It's like if we were like in some other science, like physics or something, that could have been bad, right?
Chemistry.
Like chemistry, right? But in computer science, you can just try it, and then you observe the output, and if it breaks, who cares? Just go back and try something else, right? So. Oh, sure. That's another. Great. Don't do your experiments on high-powered client X's live server, because they'll be mad at you. So 4 didn't work. Somebody else had an idea, I think.
$I.
Yeah. So $i is kind of typically what you would do. So what this is going to do is follow the value of I. So every time through the loop, I is going to increment. So the first time through the loop, it's going to be 0. And then the next time it's going to be 2. And then, so that way we're going to get different elements of the array. Instead of getting purple all the time, we got purple, yellow, green. So we still didn't get all of them. How do we get all of them?
Make it a 4 where the 3
With the
is.
less than.
That's right.
That's what I meant.
Oh,
Just kidding.
I thought you were serious. Either way is perfectly fine. Right. So we have to get go up to 4. And now we get all of them. So 0, 1, 2, 3, which is 4 numbers starting at 0. So the for each is a little more convenient. You don't have to know the length of the array ahead of time. If we wanted to assure that we were going to get all the elements of this array, but we weren't sure how long the array was going to be, we'd have to like calculate the array length before we started the loop, and then say, you know, I is less than whatever the array length came out to be. And all of those things are possible, and it's pretty much what the for each loop is doing for you anyways, behind the scenes. So PHP programmers are big fans of the for each loop, and we use those a lot. And they come up in JavaScript. I'm pretty sure most modern languages have some implementation of a for each.
Can I ask a quick question?
Of course. Yes.
The 4 lines, you have a semicolon after that, I equals 0 and I is less than 4, but not after the plus plus.
Yeah.
It's just asymmetrical. And
Yeah. I have no idea what would happen if I did this.
I think it's,
It doesn't like it.
yeah, it doesn't work.
Yeah.
I'm just curious if you had any way of explaining.
I do not. I have no way.
What is that last part again? What is that?
This piece here,
That little, yeah.
yeah. Yep. This is the increment operator.
Oh,
So,
so it's an operator, not like a statement.
right. So $i, $i is the variable, or a variable, and plus plus is an operator. And what this operator does is say increment whatever variable it's attached to by 1. So increment by 1. So in the case of a loop where we're trying to go through each thing one thing at a time, that's a very common thing to do. So it's a shorthand that's been around in computer science for as long as I've been in computer science, and certainly longer than I have, but I don't know how long. So we could say change the value of I by assigning it a new value of $i plus 1. So that's the long way of writing what plus plus does. So this is saying I starts at 0, but then the next time through the loop, add 1 to 0, and then store that in I.
So that time it has the semicolon.
I don't, that's a good question. Let's try it. No semicolon.
Oh, so it doesn't.
Semicolon. I think that was just me. Yeah. So the third,
You're not supposed to have it.
right. So
when
the
it's-
third thing of the for loop is no semicolon. And that's the same in C and C++. Probably the same in Java. Why that's true, I don't know. But all I know is if you put it there, it blows up.
So you were saying something about how you don't need to know the length of the array ahead of time. That's what the for each loop.
That's right.
The
So
for loop is it's a shortcut, it's shorthand, but you need to know ahead of time. Or you need to do some
for
finding the length of the array.
yeah, for each is the shorthand. For each is the shortcut. The for loop, you'd either, if your intention is to get everything in the array, then you have to know how long the array is. If your intention is no matter how long it is, I only want the first 4, then you don't need to know. You can just use 4. So it's going to depend on your use case for sure. But
So you could just make that for like 100.
that's right. Yeah, I don't know what will happen now. Actually, it's not going to care because the loop itself doesn't depend on the array in this case. We're just using the array as an example. Oh, right. So when we tried to reference once we got past 3, the 4th value of the array didn't exist, so PHP was upset. So these proceeded as normal. But then when I asked for the 0, 1, 2, 3, 4th value, it blew up, and then the 5th value, and so on,
Okay.
all the way up to 100. Yeah. So,
You're at time, just so you know.
oh, sorry.
Wow. 52, I just wanted to
So I can,
tell you how people coming in.
yeah, thanks, Vicky. So I'll put these, I'll put on the Nerd Summit webpage the source code to this presentation. You can download it and play around with it and do whatever you want to it. So that was great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Might be cross-eyed.